Hello, hello, and welcome to Journey to SEA 2025. This is your host, Shelley-Ann Edwards Barron, your creative writing specialist, here to talk to you about reports, narratives, and comprehension. If this is your first live, know that we're on episode 35, so there are some episodes that you might need to catch up on, or you can buckle down and pay attention to the notes and, check in on those that are most useful to you. And again, if you're new, just a little bit about myself. I'm a creative writing specialist, and I call myself that because I look at writing from multiple perspectives. So it's not just about teaching writing or writing myself, it's actually about thinking about the reader and getting my students to do the same. I work with students at the primary school level, secondary school level, university, and I even work with authors who are preparing their books for publication. So I work with editing as well. So writing from multiple perspectives. And because of that, it has given me insight into how to really get involved with students and get them really understanding how to write well. So this series is dedicated to our journey to SEA, and I want to make sure that you have the tools that you need, you have the ideas, and you understand what is required of students. So if it is that you're not too sure, you can go back to the beginning of the series. I think between episodes 1 and 4, I went through the foundation concepts so that you could really understand what exactly is creative writing, what reports are, what narratives are, and exactly what is being tested. Now, at episode 35, we've covered lots of the foundation concepts. What we're doing right now is actually doing a review and spot checks so that you can keep your students or your child practicing and getting the most out of the time they have left. So let's get into it. Let me share my screen. And we are dealing with today, we're looking at past tense and accident reports. We're looking at how to flavor the setting, and we're thinking about sci-fi stories today. And then we're doing another focus on nonfiction. So let's see. Before we get into all of that, of course, remember, um, every week, I try to touch on some general ideas that can help keep us focused and working on what we're supposed to. And this week, I had an interesting experience with a game I was playing. It's one of those word games. Yes, words. I deal with words all the time, even in games. It's one of those word games where you have to like an anagram where you have to get as many words as possible from a specific, set amount of letters. And there's this function in it where, sometimes you're staring at the letters and they're all in the same spot and you can't think of anything. And then there's a function that you press that, shuffles the letters. And when that happened, I mean, I did that a couple of times in the game I was playing, shuffling the letters. And I noticed that when the letters were shuffled, it's like my mind was seeing things differently and seeing them new. And I got lots and lots of words after I shuffled. And it occurred to me that, sometimes when we're facing situations, even with this journey to SEA, maybe other situations in life, when we're looking at things the same way all the time, sometimes we can really feel stuck. And so, if we take the time to maybe shuffle things, get different perspectives, see things differently, then we can get ourselves unstuck. Now, that also occurred to me when I was going through a lesson on comprehension, and you guys know I advocate reading the questions first, one question at a time, and then you go through and get the answers because it's an exam and not just reading and for discussion's sake. And a student told me, when I explained a particular activity to him, he said, "That's different." And, I laughed to myself because I'm thinking, if it is you're stuck, like I said, you're stuck doing the same things and you're not getting through, then maybe you need to do things a little bit differently. And that kind of, got me into thinking about the other 2 points where, we really need to keep showing students how to write. We should never take it for granted that, okay, I told you this already, so you should know, or, it's easy for them to come up with ideas. We should always be demonstrating and modeling and really engaging students in that process. And the whole idea of, reinforcement and all of that comes through that process. But then again, remember, we're looking at things differently, especially if they're not working. If it's working, then we're reinforcing, yeah? But if it's not working and the student isn't getting it, we need to look at it differently. We need to keep demonstrating and modeling. And we need to remember that sometimes, repetition doesn't mean doing the exact thing over and over. That's why students go through so many different prompts because we don't want them memorizing a particular prompt. We want them to be able to apply their skills in different situations and different contexts. And so, think about it like that. Fresh perspective, different approaches, and looking at things from, I guess practicing things in different contexts. So I hope that helps, whatever is going on, that you could, you know, really be able to buckle down and focus and work with your child as we go toward SEA 2025. Okay, so enough for that. Let's get into what you came here for today. Um, so we're looking at past tense and accident reports with the report writing. And this week I thought, I should just spend a little bit more time with the past tense than I've done before. So, um, we have the different, I guess, versions of past tense. The English language is a pretty time-bound language, meaning that our tenses are, fixed within time. And the whole concept of a tense means, we're using particular words to talk about time and actions as they relate to each other in time. Which one came first, which one came next, what's coming up in the future, those kinds of things. We're really kind of thinking about time. And so we have these different types of past tense. The one that most of us know and we're familiar with is simple past tense. We may or may not know about the past continuous. There's also past perfect continuous. Now, this last one here is not really taught at this level because it's one of those kind of tricky tenses. I mean, we use it in regular everyday life, kind of because we hear it and we use it, but in terms of writing with it, not so much. Past perfect also is, I don't know if it is still taught, but it is quite useful for SEA writing this report. But definitely students should be most familiar with simple past and past continuous. All right, so here's what it kind of looks like. So these are the three that I think students should know. And excuse me, these are examples showing how the actions are related in time. So simple past really just focuses on one action, right? So I walked to school. Even if you did something else, you might say, and I walked to school and I um arrived early, or so just individual actions. The continuous and the perfect change things a little bit, where with the continuous, we're talking about an action that's happening over a period of time, and quite often it's interrupted by another action. So I was reading when she called and so on, and that's how we could use this continuous um, past continuous in report writing. One person was doing an action when another action occurred. So we could use it like that. And then we have the past perfect, which is the one with the had that somehow a lot of people don't quite know how to use well. If you can get your child to work with the past perfect, even if they just use like maybe two instances of the past perfect and they use it well in their writing, it's going to show that they have a higher level of understanding of grammar when it comes to past tense, and that is going to be a decided edge. Now, without even knowing what the term is, lots of students use this all the time. I mean, in speaking, we use it, but nobody says, okay, yes, I'm going to use past perfect now, right? And in fact, the only reason I'm actually labeling them because I don't often call them by name when I teach students how to use them. The only reason I'm labeling them is so that you would know the terms, so that you could do further research. You can go online, search up past perfect versus past simple past tense, and you can get tons and tons of worksheets. Like I said, there are quite a few places where you can get worksheets, and especially if you're looking for English as a second language, because they're teaching these kinds of concepts all the time. Lots and lots of worksheets that you could practice with. If you're having any trouble with any of the tenses, then that's definitely what you could pay attention to. So here's another grid that shows how each one is represented and with an example. So again, I walked to school. I was walking to school when it started to rain. I had walked to school before it started to rain. So with the past perfect, we have one action happening in the past before another action, and they're not necessarily related or connected, but we're just informing of what happened, right? Um, and so these are some words that you could use with them: the focus, the definition. So I'm going to um, leave this up. You could screenshot, you could, get a copy of it, and so see all the three different past tenses that you can use with the reports that work out really well in terms of the structure of the sentence, in terms of the formality of the sentence, and in terms of showing the relationship between actions in terms of time and sequence without making any judgment or anything like that. So absolutely important that students get the past tense. Okay, so I know you could pause the video, take a screenshot, and you're good to go. All right. Reminders about accident reports. Situations with harm, damage, or theft which occur by chance. I mean, we didn't plan it. Maybe you picked up something and, sometimes you're writing with somebody's pen and another person calls you or your phone rings or something like that and you walk off and then you realize, wait, I have the pen. So that's an accidental theft, just in case you were wondering what I meant by theft, which occurs by chance, right? We didn't do that on purpose. Um, and in these cases, punishment is not usually included because, we don't punish the accidents. Um, we might still have the teachers and principals calling parents and such, but not necessarily, suspending or giving lines or anything like that, because these are things that happen by chance. What might happen is that, I guess, rules and guidelines could be created to prevent the accident from happening again in the future. And so these are some of the things that you can keep in mind when you're getting to like paragraph 4 and 5 in the reports and wondering what to put in those sections. Those are some things to consider. Of course, it's always very important to have that step by step and including the details. It's something that I often tell students because even when they know it, they have to be reminded that we don't want summaries or conclusions or opinions in that sense where you give a judgment about what a situation or an action really means. And the best example that I could give is like if you're writing about a situation where a child is being bullied, then saying that the child is being bullied, that's a summary. And we don't want a summary. Remember, we want the situation step by step, what actually was done. So let's say an accident, somebody slipped and injured themselves. If you just say they slipped and they injured themselves, then that's a summary of the actions. So, what exactly did they slip on? Where were they heading when they slipped? What happened when they fell? Details, step by step details. It's important for the reports that you work with step by step details so that the reader can get a really good understanding of how the accident occurred so they can put the relevant rules and so on in place to make sure the accident doesn't happen again. All right. Um, and then so this week, of course, you're reviewing past tense, particularly past perfect. If it's not something that you have been working with before, then um, it's not necessary to rush to add it in right now, but it's a fairly simple thing to get a student to just do 1 or 2 sentences using past perfect effectively. And I'm sure if you actually go back into their writing, you might find examples of it where they didn't even know they were using past perfect because it's part of the way we speak, you know? Of course, uh, practice quick planning the accident reports. You want to get into the habit of coming up with the details and the step by step that I was just talking about. You want to get into the habit of coming up with that fairly quickly because now remember, we're heading into the exams, so we want time and timing to be, faster and faster. So, and of course, you want to write a complete accident report inclusive of planning. So you don't want to plan and then do the writing. You want to set the time to 50 minutes, 50. That's the time that they have for the exam. And then you want to get everything done within that time and then go through and assess and see how things were going. All right. And so I do have these planning worksheets. Um, the 15 full-length planning worksheets, 10 quick planning worksheets, and the worksheets are prompts with the different sections to get students really thinking about what's going on in the report itself. And then there's a summary section to track progress. And of course, it's like a mini booklet because I do include notes about different types of reports, how to use the worksheets, examples, tips for writing reports, and so on. All right, and then I do still have the 5 reports challenge with sample reports, more prompts, detailed notes on each type of report. So I work with, now this one has 6 types of reports in it. I usually work with 5. The sixth one is natural disasters. I don't generally teach natural disasters because I don't think it'll come in the exam. After studying the last 3 times reports came, there wasn't any natural disasters. You more would get like activities, events, incidents, and accidents. I haven't actually seen competitions either, but it's good to know how to write about competitions because students are exposed to competitions. And so that's something for them to know because they could get it. Natural disasters is a little bit more technical, so may or may not, even though it's covered in social studies. All right. Okay, so narratives, we're looking at setting description and science fiction. And for the setting, we want to make sure we use sensory expression. So words that appeal to senses. So we want to talk about sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing, movement, emotions, all of those. Figurative language, important as well. That's what they're being tested on as well, use of figurative language. So the three key ones are um, similes, metaphors, and personification. The fourth one that students should be able to know and use at this level would be the onomatopoeia. Yes, there are others, but I would say top three, similes, metaphors, personification. Fourth would be onomatopoeia. And then you have others like the hyperbole, which is exaggeration, and the alliteration, which is the, initial um, consonant letter repeated. So there are others, but those top four, let's say, those are the ones that you should have at least one example of each or a couple examples of a few of them. Now, similes are very useful, but you don't want to overdo the similes. So I would say look at maybe metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia, like two of each. You don't want more than two similes for sure. Definitely not more than two similes because the thing with similes, while it's useful to include them and students will get marks, is that similes are taught quite early on. So students at standard one and two learn about similes. And so if a student is reliant on similes at this point in standard five, their writing is not going to sound as sophisticated and as level appropriate as it would if they're using the others more often. All right. And the type of expressions that are used makes a difference too. It's pretty hard to use a simile that is fresh and new. Most people revert to similes that they've, tried and true similes. If you could create your own that are a little bit different, then that'll be way better than just using the ones that were learnt by memory, from back in the day, but also personification and the onomatopoeia. They do different things to stories. So those are ones that you want to pay attention to as well. So be careful with the similes. Yes, include them, but just be careful with them. All right. The other thing is that interaction with the setting makes the stories more believable. So it's like settings should not be described like just by itself. It's really a much better idea to have the character interact with the setting. So those of you who've been following the series, I've spoken about description and action many times, and that is really the way you want to get things happening. Don't just let the character stand there and things happen over there. You want to have the character really interacting and responding to what's going on in the setting. And so what I use, it's an acronym, sort of refining it as I go, but the idea is to get students thinking that they always have to flavor the settings. And now, even after you teach them this, you have to keep reminding them and showing them how to do it. But it's a simple thing. Once they've memorized the acronym and what it means, they can write it at the top of their page when they're plotting their stories. And it'll be there as a reminder that I have to flavor my setting. And what does flavor setting mean? So you want to feel I actually really I did that. Okay, let me fix that. And I checked through these Yeah, it's the spelling of fingers. Um, Let me just double check everything else. Yeah, okay, so we're good, right? Let me see, let's go down where we were going to be talking about the field with fingers. Yes, let's get back to that. Oh, that's so funny. All right, let me share that back now. Yeah, so, okay, so now the characters flavor the setting. So the idea, yes, the writer is the one who's actually using the words and so on, but remember I was talking about the character interacting with this setting. So if the writer, the young writer, thinks about it like the character is flavoring the setting, then it's more likely that they would see that the character is involved with the setting and you're interacting with it. So the character has to feel with fingers. The character has to listen. The character has to act and visualize and observe odors and uncover taste and react to what's happening in the setting. And so I've been studying it for a little bit, trying to, figure out ways to get the students to really understand how to incorporate it into their writing. And this is one of the ways that I've seen that it helps because once the students memorize the acronym and they're writing, I could tell them things like, hey, I don't see any flavor, FLAVOUR. There's no flavor in your writing. Where do we feel with fingers? Where do we listen? Where do we act? Where do we visualize? What words show the observation of the odors? What words show the reaction and the interaction and response to the setting? So you can identify and have a conversation about it so that they can understand the different parts of it when we use the acronym like this. All right. Um, and when it comes to science fiction, just a quick note about science fiction. When dealing with science fiction, this is like an amazing opportunity to really get creative with character descriptions. We don't want to get too wild because, again, remember, this is an exam, not a test at how creative and crazy your descriptions could be. We really just want to have it creative enough to work for the context. All right. And of course, setting descriptions. Again, be creative with, if you're on a spaceship or, that's why I have like these three. So we have mechanical issues, we have chemical-based issues, and then we have futuristic situations like, with aliens or, advanced technology kind of thing. Um, but whatever you're writing about still has to make sense. And it has to make sense in the sense that um, the actions still need to follow a plot. So regardless of whether, we have purple people with green tentacles where hair should be, well, hair would be on a human kind of thing, or they don't have legs, they're kind of just floating and that kind of way. The characters and the setting, maybe we have two suns and three moons and whatever the situation is. The idea, though, is that we still must have a context and a hook and a complication and an increase and crisis and, solving the crisis and all those things. So the plot still has to make sense. So, yes, be creative and explore and, create some interesting characters. To me, it's always much more fun when a story has interesting characters. Um, but just remember that you still do have to follow a plot. All right? And so when it comes to the descriptions, setting descriptions, um, I do have This one is like 90% complete. So if you want to get a copy now, I'll give it to you at a discount. It includes like a detailed explanation of flavor. I already have that. The 8 worksheets that, help students practice and see how to work with flavor to get the descriptions. And it's broken down into like, what, um, which of it, choose a sense and write about it. In this particular context, which of your senses is the um, most interesting one to describe? Figurative language approach, the vivid verbs, because verbs are extremely important when it comes to description, more than most people think. It's not just about the adjectives and the adverbs. We really have to think about the verbs themselves. And sometimes just changing a verb, you don't change anything else, just changing a verb in a sentence makes a huge difference. So I do have a worksheet on that. And so, yeah, let me know. I have a few worksheets, bits and pieces. I could send me a message. I can, tell you what I have available. I could put together a package of random stuff for you that would be working toward description. So let me know. All right. Of course, we have prompts for practice and examples so that students know what they're doing and what it should look like. All right. Lots of notes and explanations and that type of thing. Okay, so like I said, I'm always working on the worksheets, even when they're complete, I'm still adding stuff and doing different things. So send me a message, let me know what you're looking for. I'll let you know what I have, and we could work out something. All right. And I still do have these for those of you who just want to get like complete stories to see what they look like, additional prompts, descriptions of each. So if you want to know more about science fiction, a little bit more, I have additional notes in this one. Again, prompt analysis, how to analyze prompts, that's a big deal. I had a situation with a student. You see the difference between first person and third person? That's not something to take for granted. It pops up ever so often, even when students know it. They still make little mistakes. Like, the student had, it was a third person prompt, and she was using a question. And she said, l pretty much let me tell you a story about my experience, but it was a third person prompt. Now, the rest of it, she wrote third person, but just that beginning, and this was like at the beginning, so that would garner a lot of attention and cause her to lose marks. So, yeah, pay attention to that whole third person, first person thing, and having students read stories and recognize the difference, that would help. So I do actually have some planning, well, plotting worksheets that you could get. Let me know if you're interested in getting a few worksheets where students can practice plotting quickly and that type of thing. All right. Let's see. So we're on to comprehension, and we're looking at nonfiction details and strategies. So, what's the purpose of nonfiction? To share information, explain a topic, describe a thing. Um, Different formats, cause and effect, comparison, contrast, descriptive, problem solution. Now, the thing with this is that I've noticed in the SEA type stories, I'm saying stories, sorry, SEA type articles, what happens is that you don't often get like a whole essay problem solution. You might get like a single paragraph. So once students are able to understand what these look like and what they, how they would show up in writing, if they get a question like, what is the main idea of a paragraph? They could recognize, okay, problem, solution, or different things, and that would help guide them toward understanding. Of course, main ideas, that's a major part of nonfiction. And to be honest, all they really need to do is to look in that first sentence. The average nonfiction would have topic sentence paragraphs. And so the first sentence would be the main idea of the paragraph. Usually that's where it is. Sometimes it's at the end, last sentence. Very seldom would you not have a stated main idea in a well-written nonfiction. So notice I said well-written. I have seen some worksheets and some practice tests that are not as well-written as they could have been. And so it's a little bit more frustrating to students. But rest assured, if you study the past papers, you'd realize that the examiners who prepare the SEA exam, they do try to follow conventional thinking so that students can follow this kind of conventional thinking as well and have the best opportunity to answer questions effectively. And so you're reviewing nonfiction, you want to look at purpose and text structure, review topic sentences and main ideas, and then you want to do a complete worksheet. Now, if you've been following this series, you also know that this is a comprehension section. So if you're new, um, you're probably wondering what I mean by session one, session two, session three. The idea is that you need to spend at least 3 individual sessions. So we're not just doing all these things back to back one day. You want to have the session one, like maybe on a Monday, session two on a Wednesday, session three on a Friday. So, you're breaking it up and you want to spend like 20 minutes for session one and session two, and for session three, um, maybe like an hour or so, because that's when you want to do like a sort of culmination. So the other two are kind of like spot checks, and the third one is a culmination time. So you could schedule it. So if you don't have a schedule, look at the remaining time and the different topics, and you can actually schedule the time so that you know what you're working on, because you have to take this deliberately and, pay attention to how much time you have left. You're maximizing the time that you have left. All right. So I think if you're still looking for the past papers with answers, I have those. No, these are all digital, mind you. I should keep saying that. It's all digital. You don't necessarily have to print all of it, but you would have the information. Yeah, even with these, you might just want to print the worksheets section of it, but this comes with notes as well. And so between the two, this is just $200. You get a review of the past papers and you get some fresh papers to practice the comprehension, and all with notes explaining what I spoke about in terms of nonfiction. So what are the unique aspects of nonfiction, what to pay attention to, and the answers are provided with this one as well. But of course, this is the answers. Um, I give explanations of how to approach answering the question and why a particular answer might be a better fit than another one. So you get some of that explanation throughout as well. So it's not just about double checking answers to see if you're correct. You're actually getting a sort of tutoring about how to answer SEA type questions. And I created these worksheets very closely as possible to the exam itself. I spent a long time studying the comprehension section of the exam to see what are the unique features to really give students the best opportunity possible to answer questions effectively. All right. And so just like that, we're at the end of episode 35. And I hope the time was useful and you got some insight. And if you're looking for, I think, all of the topics that we're covering now, we're just doing spot checks and reminders and those kinds of things. All of the topics have been covered in way more detail before, because like I said, this is episode 35. So please you can go back to previous episodes if you have any challenges or struggles with the any particular topic to get some more details. And if you can't find an episode topic for some reason, reach out to me. I did complete the episodes list, but I I don't know, I keep wanting to add more details. So I wanted to add a little summary for each, and that's taking me forever. So, but it's there, it's there, it's there. You could just do a search on YouTube. So you go to the YouTube channel, which is Word Coach Limited, and then go to lives because now these are in recordings now, but the previous ones were on the lives. And just do a search for whatever topic, and it'll bring up all the episodes related to that topic, even from Journey to SEA 2024 and 23, because I did 2 years before this one as well. So you can get different takes, different variations on the same topic if it is the explanation that I'm giving now isn't as clear to you as you would like it to be. So thank you so much for your time. And I do appreciate the comments I get and the feedback and the questions because the questions really help me understand if what I'm sharing is useful and to fill in any details to support as you would need. All right, so this is Shelley Ann Edwards Byron, your creative writing specialist, signing off of episode 35 from Journey to SEA 2025. So have a good one and take care.